Welcome to the podcast, guys. I want to talk about a deep topic today, something that I stumbled on, I touched on, and did a podcast on a while back, and that was grieving the loss of a pet. It was a really personal podcast that I did because I had experienced loss of pets myself, and the podcast that I did was really geared towards the loss of a dog that was very, very, very personal to me, and that was my dog Silly. So when I spoke about it, I think it really touched a chord with a lot of people, and it was very, very well received. So I want to go a little further on that podcast today and really hit the topic harder because I do think it's so personal. I do think it's so important. Losing a dog is, to a lot of people, equivalent to losing a child. And anybody who's ever gone through that loss knows how hard it is. And the worst thing people do is they say, well, it's just a dog, or get another dog. So in today's podcast, I want to talk about what you can do and what you should do and what you shouldn't do after the loss of a pet, and some considerations to have, and also what you should and shouldn't say to people who have just lost a pet. So this podcast is brought to you commercial free by our friends at Visionary Pet Food. That is my favorite food. I'm feeding it to my dogs. It's great. It's a ketogenic diet, which means it is low in carbohydrates, high in fats, high in protein, very healthy for your dog. Also, they have a great other product, which is a Visionary Pet Food raw freeze-dried food. Now, I use this as a treat. I love it. My dogs love it. You'll see that I can't keep a bag in the house where the top isn't torn off. So if you want to feed your dog a ketogenic diet, it's a great thing to try. Your dog will be happy, and my dogs are very happy and healthy with the ketogenic diet. Give it a try. Check out Visionary Pet Food. Check out the link in the video description down below, or visit my site for a discount code that'll save you 20% off your purchase. So let's talk about losing a dog, right? A dog to us who really love dogs is a significant member of our family. It's someone who we love. It's someone who we spend more time with than anybody else. I mean, most of the time, you'll spend more time with your dog than you spend with most members of your family, except possibly your spouse. Hopefully, you spend more time with your spouse. The relationship people form with their dogs is very significant. Now, there are people who have dogs and just don't form that kind of a bond. And that really is what always amazes me. It never amazes me how people really mourn the loss of a dog, how they get really torn up by the loss of a dog. What really surprises me is how people don't get wrapped up in the loss of a dog, how they don't really grieve, how they're not really breaking down, how they're not crippled by pain. So, I'm the opposite guy. Like, I don't understand how people can actually have a dog, live with a dog, and then whether the dog dies 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, how they can't be completely distraught. My friend Kevin, who's my best friend, who really gets me and really understands dogs as well, every time he loses a dog, it's like he lost a child. Now, he doesn't have children. A lot of times people say that people who don't have children kind of put that relationship or that dynamic onto a dog. So obviously a woman who's had children who loses a dog doesn't equate that loss as hard as she would obviously the loss of a child, which is the greatest loss any person can experience. And a man as well. I mean, I'm saying a woman because women give birth. So I think it's a much more personal, deep issue. For men, we're wired different. Obviously we get upset, but we have different ways of expressing it. But with a pet, I mean, I think it really kind of levels that playing field, where if you don't have children and you have a pet, I'm talking dogs here, when that dog dies, there is a deep, deep thing. Now, let's talk about, first of all, considerations, right, that we want to think about in losing a dog. And the immediate ones are, we're going to think, did we do the right thing? Right? If we had to put the dog down for an immense amount of suffering, or whatever it was, then the first thing is that self-doubt. Should I have given the dog another day, another week, another year, whatever? And you've got to kind of rest assured in your heart that you did the right thing. right? They always say that the dog will tell you when it's time to go. The dog will tell you when they're ready to go. And we have to listen to that. We have to honor that. We have to respect that. Now, that being said, I remember years ago, a friend of mine, who was a rabbi, asked me to speak to one of his parishioners, I guess you would call it, who was also a very religious Jew, and asked my opinion. He said the doctor told him to put the dog down because the dog wasn't going to get better, and he asked my opinion. I was honored because this rabbi is a very wise man, and the fact that he passed this person on to me to speak to was very flattering. So I asked him the simple question of, is the dog suffering now, right? Because I think suffering is a part of life. I mean, it sucks. My father suffered immensely before he passed away. Janet's mom was in pain before she died. My mom is in pain and you know, is old where she may be dying soon. But, you know, pain and suffering is part of that process. So I think a dog that's in slight pain or discomfort, it's not necessarily the right time to let them go. I think when the dog has more bad days than good days, I think it's time to make that decision. But I talked to this person, he said, no, he goes, I don't, you know, the dog is still relatively young. I think the dog was like 7 years old back then. And I said I would let the dog go through some discomfort, you know, as long as the dog is not in dire pain. If the dog is in some slight discomfort, that's part of the process of life. As long as the dog has more good days than bad days, like Dwayne over here is having more good days than bad days, then I would not put the dog down. And again, it's such a personal place to come from. It's such a hard thing. So you have to realize that you've got to make that decision when it comes that time. And you want to surround yourself with people who love you. Surround yourself with people who understand, not people who are going to make excuses for it, right? The very, very worst thing that people do is they make excuses for whatever, for their opinion, for their justification of things. Like, well, you know, I wouldn't, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not your decision, right? It's really, really important. So when you go past this, when you've lost that dog, you want to surround yourself. The most important thing you should do after the loss of your dog is surround yourself with people who understand, or surround yourself with nobody. Because the immense depression, the immense pain that you will feel after the loss of a pet, you know, I keep saying pet because it could be cat, could be a bird, could be whatever. For me, it's a dog. If it's not understood, and if the person isn't able to relate to you and you're not able to relate to that person, it will make it worse, right? It will make it worse. So the two great losses that I suffered was when my dog Boots died, who I rescued from a shelter and brought him home, and took me a while to get him used to Silly and everything. It's a long story. I'll address that in another video, another podcast. But that loss was immense. And I only had the dog for 4 months. Then Silly died several years later after that. But the pain was so powerful. I mean, Silly had gone into kidney failure, and if you watch my other podcast, I'll put a link to it in the description down below. You'll see how I talked about it. He went into kidney failure, and for 30 days, I syringe fed the dog, sorry. It was the hardest time of my life. And when he finally died, he died in my arms. I was laying on the floor sleeping. When I slept on the floor with him every single night for 30 days because he couldn't get back in the bed. And I held him while he was dead. And when I woke up, he was in my arms. He was soaking wet from just my tears, having soaked him up. So I called and texted all the people who, that were close to me at that point. And then I decided who I would talk to. The people who said, oh, well, he's better off now and blah, 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 those were gone. Right? The people who said, I can understand your pain. I mean, what can I do? What do you need? I feel for you, blah, blah, blah. Those were the people that really I reached out to. So that, a slight segue now is, what do you do when that dog passes away? And so if you're watching this and your dog is in the process of dying, or the process of maybe, getting old and these things, consider a couple things. right? Have a plan. Now, there's some places in the country, I know in California, here in Los Angeles, we have a really great pet cemetery, it's Sophie, which is saving our pets' history and eternity. And it's the most peaceful, most beautiful place that I can imagine. I wish I could be buried there. I'd like them to make an exception and let me be buried there. But I'm kidding. I'm going to be buried with Janet, I'm sure. But the idea of burying a dog in a place has a different feeling than cremating the dog. So here's the options. There's obviously burying the dog as a traditional burial. There's cremating the dog and keeping the urn, cremating the dog and putting the dog down. Some people do some crazy things like freeze drying the dog, stuffing the dogs, and stuff like that. But the other thing is, is just spreading the ashes. That's another thing. Those are different options, right? And those are things you want to think about. As morbid as this may sound, when I got Goofy, I made sure that I had a place near Silly that he could rest in eternity, right? That's kind of weird, I know, but I share all my weirdness with you guys so that you know that I'm wired different on these things. I'm a tough guy. I'm a martial artist, athlete, whatever. But deep down inside, I take these things really personal. I get really, really absorbed into the lives of animals. I mean, all the dogs that that Janet had when we got together. I mean, they're all so close to me. I mean, Boz is 18 years old, and I hold him in my arms every single day. He sleeps between us because he can't. If he sleeps in his crate, he cries and he gets scared because he's blind and deaf. So he sleeps on a pillow between Janet and I. Jimmy is 10 years old. He's the most amazing dog. I love him with my heart and soul. And Dwayne is a youngster. Love him. Goofy and Maya. I mean, my God, Goofy is my heart and soul. So I get the idea of losing a dog because I've lost a few. Now, how you handle that loss and what you do after is critical, right? So listen to what I'm saying about this, because it's imperative that you understand that it's not the time to make rash decisions, right? It's not the time to go out and rescue another dog. That's what everybody's going to tell you. They're going to say, well, you owe it to another dog in a shelter to rescue them in honor of the dog you just lost. No, it ain't. It's not what you should do. And a reason I can tell you that is because that's when people make bad decisions. People always tell you in crisis management, don't make a decision when you're distraught, right? And when you've lost a dog, you're distraught. And you might be distraught for a month, it might be a year. After I lose a dog, I never get another dog, right? I never think, oh, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I never do that. And the reason I don't do that is because I know I'm making a rash decision. And no good decision is ever made in duress, right? It's always going to be something that you want to think about. I mean, you can start looking, you can start talking to people, you can start talking to breeders or rescues or go to the shelter. But the idea is not to make that decision, because you're making that decision based on pain and suffering and whatever. And you want to make that decision based on love and compassion and understanding and strategy and what do you want to do with this dog? What kind of dog is it? People oftentimes, when they're in that place, will end up getting a dog in the stressful place. That's the wrong dog for them, right? Oh, well, the dog is aggressive and he needs a chance and he needs a home and he lost this and he lost that and da-da-da-da. And all of those things are bad decisions. Listen to what I'm telling you. Another dog will come along, another dog will give you the chance, another dog will give you love. I get it. But to jump right in is tough. So I'm telling you, don't listen to those people who are going to right away guilt you into doing what you should be doing, what they're saying you should be doing, because it's oftentimes a bad decision. So let me tell you how I deal with it, right? So after I go through immense pain, I wallow in that pain. I just stay there. I stay stuck there, and I embrace it. I embrace the pain. It's just so painful that I delve into it. I dive into it with both feet. Because tippy-toeing through it, for me, keeps me stuck in it, right? If I just kind of dip my toe in the pain and then try to, I'm going to go over here and be happy now, That doesn't work for me. Right? So I'm one of those people who needs to isolate myself, shut myself in, close my eyes, cry, sleep, cry, do nothing. And that's what I did after Silly died. And it worked because I came out the other side a stronger, better, healthier person. People who tell you there's something dysfunctional with you because you need to do that are people who don't grieve the same way as you. Now, if someone grieves less, it doesn't mean it's any easier on them. Right? It doesn't mean that just because they're not torn up and distraught and completely disheveled because of the experience, doesn't mean they're less of a person than you. Just like if you grieve immensely, doesn't make you any less of a person than them. And that's an important thing to understand, that share your experience with someone who understands your pain. Even if they don't share your pain and they don't get it the same way, they don't experience it the same way, they should have the compassion to understand it. So I can understand someone who really grieves heavy because I grieve really heavy. I can understand someone who grieves moderately, but I don't understand people who don't grieve, because people who don't grieve don't really need the support. Sometimes you need to draw it out of them. Sometimes you need to talk to them. And the best things to ask people who have just lost a pet is, how do you feel? God, this must be terrible on you. Is there anything I can do? Is there anything you need? Do you want to talk about? Do you want to tell me about the great life you had with this dog? Those questions mean something. Not like, why are you so sad? It's just a dog. Those are the wrong questions. I mean, I'll tell you, I'd be so close to punching somebody in the face if they said to me, well, so what? You had, 14 good years with the dog. You had 12 good years with the dog, whatever. Move on. That's going to get you punched in the face by me. That just doesn't work. So for me, the dog means the world to me. It means my heart and soul. The dog that I live with, any dog I live with, especially my closest dog like Goofy, is my heart and soul, right? And so when a part of that gets torn away, to me, it's like a child. I don't have a child. I don't have any children. So to me, I equate the same. I equate it the same way. Like Boz, like I said, I carry him in my arms because I think of him like a child. So whatever you experience through loss, that's your process. That's your experience. That's your emotion. How you handle that is totally okay, right? It's totally okay for you, and you should feel good about your feelings, and you should delve into your feelings, and you should explore your feelings, and you should write about your feelings, and you should talk about your feelings, because shutting them in and squashing them doesn't work. I equate it to like a water balloon, or any kind of balloon. So if you have a balloon and you squeeze on this side gets more air or water, and you squeeze on this side and the opposite happens. But if you squeeze on both, it just pops. So it's got to come out somewhere, right? Your emotions have to go somewhere. Your feelings have to go somewhere. And some people are really uncomfortable talking. It's like when I first will go through a great loss, when I really get sad, the easiest thing for me to do is to do nothing, is to kind of numb myself in the pain, because that's how I process it. And if that's how you process it, it's good. Now, you shouldn't, I will really stress this, you shouldn't think about hurting things like killing yourself because you miss your dog, or cutting yourself, or overdosing on drugs or alcohol or anything like that. That's not the answer. That, I will tell you, will not solve anything. It might seem like you want to die at that moment, but you don't. I promise you that. I have felt like, God, maybe that's the best thing, but I was wrong. I came out the other end. What I did do is I delved into the pain. I experienced the pain. I worked through the pain by allowing myself to be in the pain, right? I didn't just say, well, I'm going to numb myself and go get drunk or go get high or something, because I don't believe in that. I'm a clean guy. I mean, if I have a cocktail once every whatever, it's a lot, because I believe in working out, being strong, being fit, being healthy, and giving this life everything you got. So other people will just numb themselves. And I really encourage you to think about that, because think about the dog that died. Think about how he needed you. Think about what you did for him or her and all the great things you shared. And to just end your life or go to that sad of a place because of that loss totally degrades and denies that amazing existence you had with that dog. It's your job to carry that further, right? It's your job to take that experience and bring it to the next level, to share it with somebody else, to help somebody else with their pain, to eventually get another dog and manifest everything you've learned through the first dog into the second dog, into the third and fourth and fifth dog. And even though you feel like you really want to end it, you feel like you want to die, you feel like you want to kill yourself or overdose or do whatever, it ain't the right answer, right? It's not. And talk to somebody who can really help you understand that, you know? Talk to a counselor or something, but talk to somebody who gets it, because losing a dog is immensely painful. And the things you do afterwards are important. So like I said, I like to delve into it. I like to stay in it. I like to wallow in it. I like to cry through it and be sad through it. And then I come out the other side, and then I want to do things, right? I want to make sure my dog has a great gravestone. I want to make sure I have a great picture as a memory, as a tribute to my dog. I want to make sure that I make a donation in his name to a charity that rescues dogs or, you know, or helps dogs or something like that. And then I want to start getting myself strong again, picking myself up, picking the pieces up, putting one foot in front of the other, and explore the great things my dog and I did. I want to write about it. I want to talk about it. And then I want to get another dog, right? I don't know how long that process is. It's always easier to have another dog before your dog dies, and that dog will get you through. For example, I mean, Goofy got me through the loss of Silly 1,000,000 times better than any person could have, right? Because we were together and we went and walked and we trained and we played and he cuddled with me and he was the best friend. You know, he still is my best friend besides Janet. But, you know, it's a different thing. So whenever people say, oh, my dog's my best friend, if their partner then says, well, I thought I was your best friend. Well, of course you're my best friend. It's a different kind of best friend. You can't equate the love of a dog to the love of your life partner, your lover, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever. You can't do that. That's weird. Just like you can't equate the love that a mother has for a daughter or son to the love that mother's going to have for a husband or whatever. It's very different. And you can't equate the love a child has for their mother as the love that they're going to have for anybody else. Love is so different. A therapist once told me that a person can love multiple people, right? A person can be in love with different people. Like their mother is one love, their child is another love, their dog is another love, their friends are another love, their self-love is another thing. And those are all the things that really come to mind when I think about these things. And, you know, as much as you try to prepare yourself for it, it's the one thing you really can't do. I mean, I'd like to be able to say to you, hey, here's the things to prepare yourself for the loss of your dog, but those don't exist, because no matter how you prepare yourself for it, you're never prepared. You're never quite prepared for the ultimate pain. And as much as I think, you know, losing a friend or something like that is deep and hard, and I've cried for many of my friends that I've lost over the years, the loss of a dog is different, right? It's deeper in some ways because it's more personal. It's, you know, we channel ourselves through our dogs. We channel our experiences through our dogs. We look at how the dog experiences things and we become part of that. We spend time with it. We tell our dog stuff we wouldn't tell anybody else. Trust me. I mean, Goofy has heard me tell him things that nobody has ever heard. And we give of ourselves, you know, and I think it's because dogs lack the ability of communication through words. So we communicate them much more spiritually, much deeper, much more profoundly in a lot of ways, because that channel of communication, I think, is a lot deeper than the channel of communication of verbal communication. So I got a couple of questions I'm going to do here. This is really a deep podcast for me because I wallow in sadness and stuff all the time. I really do. And I understand what it's like to be really sad about things. And sharing it with you is very cathartic for me. Helping people is very cathartic for me because I'm a born teacher. I'm a born helper. I want to help people have a better life. But think about that. Think about the loss that you have experienced or you may experience, and just go through it, right? Just brace yourself, because it's going to be hard, and let it be hard. Let it be tough. I like working out, like anything you do that makes you stronger, like running a marathon. The hardest part is the part that's just before the joy. So there will be joy on the other end. I promise you. You will once again laugh and enjoy the company of another dog. I didn't think so. When Silly died, I thought Goofy would never measure up to Silly. But he has, and surpassed in so many ways. Silly surpassed him in other ways. Goofy surpassed him. So just be patient. Just allow the pain to work its process and allow it to make you into a better person. Because I think it will. I really do. I believe that. I look forward to your comments on this podcast, on this, in the description down below. Put your comments down. Tell me what you think. Tell me about how this hopefully has helped you, or what another topic I can cover that would mean a lot to you, that would help you with your experiences in this journey that you have called life with dogs. Okay. Corrine says, what you do makes a huge difference for a lot of dogs. Amazing work. I'd like to have your insight on what to do about this following problem. I have with my 3-year-old Bernese Mountain Dog, female. While on leash for training, if she does not want to do something, she deliberately will put her front leg over the leash and won't move. This automatically stops me from getting any control over the leash. She does not respond to correction training. Tends to shut down, stays engaged with praise and encouragement, but I feel her putting her paw over the leash gives the control of the leash. How do you think I should go about this, knowing she is slightly anxious? Okay, it's a similar process to a dog that grabs the leash with their mouth, right? That's a real similar process with the dog. And what I would do with that dog is I would have 2 leashes, right? 2 lines. So when the dog puts her foot over that one, I would grab the other line and I would go, hey, come on, let's go. And I would show her that her behavior doesn't really dictate my training and my experience with her. I wouldn't get mad at her. I wouldn't make a joke out of it. I would just like nothing happened. I'd grab the other leash, say, come on, let's go. And the dog would eventually figure out that action has no place and the action has no result. And then the dog would move on from that pretty simply. That is my 2 cents on that. Let's see what else we got here for questions. I'm going to take one more question because it's kind of a long podcast and it's really a deep topic that I wanted to cover. So, how about this one? Nicolo, who says, great video, thank you. I was wondering the opposite, but whenever people say that, it's because they watched a different video of mine. It says, a Czechoslovakian wolf dog usually has lots of prey drive, and it's imperative to stop any hunting of wild animals as soon as they start with puppies. Is tug play a good idea with these dogs? Well, tug play is not really something that we equate to the prey drive of killing another animal, like the hunting of wild animals. With the wolf dog, understood that we don't want a dog that's killing animals to be around puppies. That being said, remember, lions, tigers, hyenas, any kind of a predator type dog or predator type animal, will kill to feed their young, their offspring, but they're not going to kill their offspring. So I don't really know about why it's imperative to stop hunting of wild animals if they start with puppies. In other words, if they have puppies. Now, if it's another dog in the pack and you have one dog is pregnant and gives birth and the other dog's in the pack, yeah, they could have some predatory drives. But the mother of the dog should not, I would think, ever exhibit that. I mean, because there's protection dogs that when they have puppies, they're still doing protection training, and that drive is very different, right? The drive of biting a tug or whatever, or hunting a wild animal has nothing to do with the way that animal should be treating an offspring. It's very, very different. It's like thinking an MMA fighter would kill their child. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't agree 100% with that. I think a well-bred dog is a well-bred dog. A well-reared dog is a well-reared dog. I don't agree personally with having dogs hunting wild animals. I don't dig it at all. I have no problem with people hunting and in shooting and killing an animal and eating it. I mean, that's just the chain of life. But like boar hunting dogs, it's just not my thing. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap the podcast up on that note. Just 2 short questions and a really deep podcast I think means a lot to me. I mean, I know it means a lot to me. I hope it means something to you. And again, it's brought to you completely commercial free by our friends at Visionary Pet Foods. The food I feed my dogs. If you want to feed your dogs what I feed my dogs, feed Visionary Pet Food. Use the link in the description below. Or if you're just listening to this podcast, go to robertcabral.com and click on my shop page. You'll save 20% on your first purchase of Visionary Pet Foods. It's a ketogenic diet. It's a very healthy. I try to eat ketogenic as much as I can. It's no sugar. Sugars are generally the root of all evil. I love sugar, so sometimes I just have a sweet tooth. But your dog, the good thing with ketogenic food is your dog doesn't have to eat them because you can control your dog. You sometimes can't control your own cravings for sweets, but you can control that your dog doesn't get them. And sweets can mean carbohydrates, starches. Starches metabolize into sugars, which can be very bad for dogs. I'm not a big fan of it. I've changed my dogs to ketogenic diet, and I feed Visionary Pet Food. There's a couple of formulas. There's the kibble like that, and then there's this raw freeze-dried food, which I love. And actually, this is what I use for treats all the time now. My videos, when you see me giving treats, it's this. It's a super healthy and natural diet, and I love it, and I hope you will too. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out robertcabral.com for the best online dog training lessons available anywhere. There are 100 plus lessons that are available, 2,000 plus minutes of instruction on the site. It's definitely the place you want to go if you want to train your dog, and training your dog will give you the best relationship with your dog that you will ever have. So thanks for tuning into the podcast, and I'll see you next week.